Can you guys hear me
everyone.
by any chance?
Welcome to the stream. Big John here tonight. We've got a guest on talking about direct democracy, but let's just get into it. Good evening, Paul Rimmer.
Round one.
Good evening, Marcus. It looks like it's frozen. And our guest tonight, talking about direct democracy, is Allan Shipham. And Allan has studied elections before, so he's not somebody who don't know what he's talking about. And I always respect anybody who's put their hand in forward to stand in elections, like we all have. But this is the National Housing Party Talk stream. My name's John.lawwrence. Our contact emails are on the bottom. And anyone in the chat, can you please share to whatever platform you can get onto? Good evening, Pat. Good evening, Mark. Anyway, without further ado, Allan, tell us about direct democracy.
Okay, you mentioned time served. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I wasn't really politically interested until about around 2010. I'd been a Liberal Democrat supporter of all things, but I voted for the other parties because they didn't stand a chance where I live. So, I voted Labour and Conservative, but not because I believed in their policies. I voted for them to get rid of the last lot, and when I talk to people, I get nodding heads all the time like you just did, because, you have a little bit of this, it don't work, so you try something else, but we keep going around in the same circle. And that got really, really frustrating. So I did join UKIP. I put all the manifestos out and looked at all the things, added it all up, and I thought, well, what am I doing? This is a good set of policies. I enjoyed my time at UKIP at the start anyway, and met lots of interesting people. Went on different elections. I supported candidates. I stood myself several times at different levels, county, borough, and even a parliamentary election in 2017. And I found the experience, as I was in it longer and longer, people trusted you with information. And I started to find things out that I wasn't happy about. And by 2020, I fell out with the chairman. And, there was a big exodus at the time. I was one of them people. And I just thought, I've tried the last hope and it hadn't worked. So I was a bit in the wilderness, to be honest, and a bit distressed, I suppose. But then I discovered direct democracy, started doing some research, found out about it, made contact with other people in the organisation, went along to a talk in London. That was very interesting, and made myself available to help them in anything that they were doing. Got involved with the Great Resist. If you're on Telegram, please join us on there. And this is a group of people who are just fighting the system, and it's raising awareness. We're not like rebels. We're just telling people what's going on in their neighbourhoods, so they can band together and try and stop it from happening. But direct democracy has become a key point in what we are offering, because this is where I move now into direct democracy and talk about that. We've got a system which is out there already. It's tried and tested. Look at Switzerland. It's been going for about 176 years. And it was born out of a revolution. Like they had a civil war there, people fighting each other, and the Swiss are vicious. That's why the Pope has the Swiss Guard in the Vatican. But, everybody who's Swiss has done national service and never fought in any wars, because they respect what's going on. And they make sound decisions, look after the interests of their people. So they use direct democracy, and the people make the decisions. So democracy is broken down in the Greek is people power, and direct is obviously direct people power. And that's the thing to take away from this conversation. And it's about, in the early Greek days, everyone would go around the village square, there'd be an issue, I don't know, they want to divert the stream or something like that. Everyone would talk about it, put forward their discussion, their arguments for and against, and then they'd take a vote. and that vote, was a majority vote, and they would then go with the majority, and it was working fine for a very long time till the Romans come along, and then they said, "Oh, look, there's no profit in this, so we think we should have a different system." And of course, we started to learn all about the different corruption and abuse that happened during that empire. But this has been used in different ways around the world. And the great thing is the people of that country have made it their own. In Liechtenstein, they've got a monarchy, and the monarch has the last say in any big decisions. But he's never vetoed anything because they make sensible decisions. In Switzerland, it's a committee of 7 people. And I always ask people, can you think of a famous Swiss prime minister? Most people just shake their head; they never heard of them. And then a famous Swiss politician? No, because these people go there, do their job, and then they go home. They're not trying to get on a platform like all the world leaders. Keir Starmer's just been made prime minister when this went out, and he's been flown more around the world than any other leader in such a short time, because he's had an opportunity to stand on various platforms at different conferences. It doesn't seem that the job is about looking after the people of the country, what it used to be or should have been. It seems to be about trying to, grandstand yourself and become some celebrity on the world stage, so you can line yourself up with a good job afterwards. So yeah, I'm committed to the cause. I'm not a member of any political party, and to be honest, there's a lot of frenzy at the moment around reform. A lot of people think that we've tried the others, let's try this crowd. I have reservations because they're not very democratic. Now, we've had a lot of promises, even today, on the news, from Nigel Farage saying we're going to change the party, it's going to be better. But until I see, action taken, I've supported reform candidates. I helped Ben Habib, who was a candidate here in the general election we just had. But I've got reservations. That said, I think a lot of these reform candidates are men of the people, women of the people, and they've got a better idea than some of the established party political candidates. So should anyone get elected who's independent, who wants to work with direct democracy, I think reform would be good partners to work with. So my mind's open. I want to see what happens everywhere. So yeah, that's how I've come to where I am at the moment. If you've got any questions about that.
Paul.
Yeah, I was interested in what you had to say there, Alan. It's interesting that UKIP was actually started by a Lib Dem called Alan Sked. So, I mean, you started with the Lib Dems, and so did UKIP. Now, I've been a member of every political party, from the extreme left to the extreme right, except the Lib Dems. Never appealed to me, although I did vote for them once in Liverpool in a local election. Now, in Liverpool, I've stood for mayor twice and police commissioner. When I stood for mayor in 2011, I ran. Was the call for direct democracy. We find out what the people actually want on these major policy issues. Maybe we could use computers or a phone or whatever, but let's consult the people rather than make decisions behind closed doors where people don't really know what was the thinking. And so, open democracy, great stuff. Now, if I can put this in a meta-political narrative, right? Why direct democracy has suddenly become popular. After the Second World War, the people, the elite of the world, the global Zionists and others, especially the Americans, they decided that they didn't want democracy to actually mean democracy. They feared what they called populism. They feared the voice of the people. In the 1930s, the people had rallied behind Adolf Hitler. They'd rallied behind Mussolini. They'd rallied behind Franco. These were not unpopular figures. I mean, if Hitler had stood in 1936 after the Olympics in Berlin, he'd have got 90% of the vote in Germany. So the globalist Zionists realised the implications of this and thought, we've got to exclude these people from making decisions. We run the show. And the way we'll run it is we'll set up globalist institutions. The primary one was the United Nations. And the United Nations wasn't only going to be given control of the international agenda, it was also going to be given control of international borders, international policies. So the parties, the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the Labour, all agreed to this. There was a certain number of agreements that were made about finance, about open borders, the United Nations 1951 Refugee Convention, which effectively abolished national sovereignty. And the goal in abolishing national sovereignty was to deny real democracy. So although the different parties can come along and say, we want that policy, we want this policy, they were actually just putting into operation policies that had been decided at the globalist level. Now, this took a concrete form when the European Union was formed, because the European Union was turning the nation state into like a subsidiary of the Brussels Empire, the Brussels bureaucracy. This is what the French wanted. This was the ideal French model of government run by bureaucrats. So we were okay from that until 1973, when Ted Heath took us into the EEC, as we were told. It was just an economic agreement, but it wasn't. It was submitting ourselves politically to Brussels. And we noticed then, we got the open borders, we got all this legislation criminalising wrong think, what they called hate speech. Anyone who challenged the liberal left-wing orthodoxies suddenly became criminals. And anyone who went outside the status quo, which is global dominance, was suddenly labelled anything, racist, anti-Semitic, homophobic, Islamophobic, whatever label they wanted to stick on people, just to deny them freedom of speech. So we lost our liberty and we lost our democracy. And people, the whole role of the media and the political parties, because British politics has always been organised through parties, the whole role of these institutions, which have been created to serve us, was simply to manipulate us, to persuade us that what the globalists wanted is what we wanted. So we wanted a multicultural society. We wanted open borders. We wanted to hand over power to Brussels. Now, it was all a fiction because nobody wanted these things. People realised that we were being destabilised. People realised that chaos was beginning to enter into our body politic. And Britain has been a very tranquil country, a very peaceful, socially peaceful country. But things started to go badly wrong. And so people, along comes Nigel Farage and UKIP, you join them, and he says, we've got to leave the EU. The EU behind all this. So we leave the EU. And what happens? Things get worse. Because the globalists are still in charge. They're still putting the globalist agenda into operation. It's not coming through the EU. It's coming direct from the United Nations. So Farage, in his naivety, thought if we left the EU, the Conservatives will return to a populist programme and everything will be fine again. But it never happened, and it hasn't happened. So Farage is suddenly, the coins dropped that he has to replace the Conservative Party. He has to replace the Lib Lab Con. If we're to have populism in Britain, where the people's voice, direct democracy, the people's voice, actually means something, we've got to eliminate the status quo parties, the Lib Lab Con. We've got to get rid of them. Now, I stood for the English Democrats in Liverpool. It was only a vehicle. It didn't, England, yeah, democracy, yeah, great democracy. But it doesn't matter what party you stand for. You've got to break the monopoly that the Lib Lab Con have over our politics in this country. They have it under a stranglehold. Now, we can only do that politically. We can't do it by simply campaigning for this, direct democracy, campaigning for that, they give the people a voice. We've got to break their power. So therefore, we have to compete at the electoral level. Now, I'm a member of the National Housing Party. This is the NHPUK. And we stand for Britain. We're a patriotic party. We stand for control of our borders. We not only want to leave the European Court of Human Rights, where all these bogus judges are telling us how to behave, we want to leave the United Nations as well, these resolutions which are confining what we can do. Now, Farage is going to have to face up to this. See, this is the issue with reform. Yeah, you can challenge the globalist agenda, but unless you break free of the United Nations, you cannot escape it. It will be imposed upon you. Now, Trump is an anti-establishment figure. Trump has come from outside the mainstream. He's not grown up on this Democrat, Republican, old buddies network. And that's why they knifed him last time. He challenged the globalist Zionist elite. I mean, people say, oh, he is a Zionist. Yeah, he might be pro-Israel, but he's not a pawn of the Zionist elite. That's very different. He's got his own opinions on these issues. They couldn't control him. That's why they knifed him. That's why they stole the election in 2020. The election was actually stolen. It was obvious that Biden never got 81 million votes. I doubt if he got over 75 million. They brought all the phony ballots in to cripple Trump. But amazingly, almost miraculously, he's back now. So we're opening up the whole political structure through these anti-establishment parties. We here at National Party of the UK, the National Housing Party, we're a voice which is pointing out the truth, which even Reform can't say. The Reform can't say leave the UN. The Reform can't point out who's actually behind this international manipulation. Reformers still, in a sense, they want to be accepted by the establishment because they don't want to be blackballed by the establishment. But they're going to come into collision with the establishment if they ever get power. So this is where direct democracy comes in. There is a final thing I want to say. Democracy in itself is not a good thing because the people without God are foolish. The people without God make the wrong decisions. The people without God become degenerate and immoral and greedy and as corrupt as the people who are running them. It's only if you've got a moral compass. It's only if you've got a strong sense of principles. It's only if you've got the right spirit that you can make democracy work. And what's the point of having democracy if you keep making the wrong decisions? It's foolishness. During the English Civil War, there was an expression, the people under God are sovereign, but the people without God are mad. So we're a Christian party. We believe in Christian values. You don't have to be a Christian to join us, but this is what we believe in. We believe in the Ten Commandments. We believe that it's good to have a moral compass and a spiritual compass, and that's what made Britain great. That's what made Europe great, and that's the reason we've fallen. Because once the globalist Zionist elite took over, their first target was Christianity. They began to undermine the morals of our society. Their second target was democracy. They began to stop us fighting back. So we're in a battle, but direct democracy would be excellent if we're in this battle to win it. Marcus?
Yeah, certainly. So what I would say is direct democracy is basically people power, isn't it? It's the people taking their own decisions into their own hands, right? And that's why a lot of the politicians will try to oppose it. Now, I am a Christian, so I'm going to be honest in everything, how I think Christianity would work in politics today. I don't think there's a big appetite for Christianity yet, unfortunately, so I don't think it works hand in hand with direct democracy. I think once people wake up to the fact that Christianity has been taken away from them, they will go back to Christianity, absolutely. But I think direct democracy will be the cornerstone or the pillar of saving our country and actually making the decisions to leave the EHCR, European Courts of Human Rights. I think most people want a stop to mass migration, or I think they want the borders closed. I think this is the best way to do it, to fight against the elite. I think the power has always been with the people. And even if we do make mistakes, let it be the people who make the mistakes, because I trust the people in this country more than I do anyone else to make the decisions in this country. And at the end of the day, if we get things wrong, I guarantee we're not going to screw it up as bad as the politicians have in the last 20 years, for example, ever since the multi-cult experiment was started by Tony Blair. So I would certainly say direct democracy is the future, but what we need to do is we need to get people from all different political parties to stand in their local areas where they can. Obviously, we need people to join different from other groups to all come together, maybe network a little bit where people can actually win and work together to get a candidate in. And let's get this in practice, because although it's been tried in Switzerland, it's never been tried here officially. So the next step is to actually get it tried at a local level. Now, do I think Reform will be the first party to do this? Not necessarily, but I think whatever political party takes this on and actually carry out the will of the people will be the party of the future. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Reform. I mean, I am a Reform member. I would like Reform to do very well, but even myself, I have learned over the last couple of weeks, and you, John and Alan, will know what I'm saying. I don't think Reform is bulletproof, and I don't think necessarily, I think they maybe not the future like I once thought they were. But anyway, putting that aside, nonetheless, I would say get round to the idea. Please look into it. It has been around for a very long time, like Alan just stated. It's been over 100 years. They have been able to keep their nose out of every single war. You know, men do military service, you know, they're very patriotic. They don't go down this globo homo kind of road that we have in Britain. So it is a more healthier society when the people have charge of the country. And also what I love about direct democracy is there's less politicians and less waste, so there's less spending. And then obviously when the people make the decisions, just look at Switzerland and then look at us. Is there really any comparison to say which is the healthiest society? So that's all I would say, and I'll pass it to Alan.
John, did you want to say anything before we come back to me? Oh, we can't hear you.
Well, you go ahead, Alan. I'll talk in a minute.
All right, there's a lot of information to take on board there.
Yeah.
I would come back to Paul in that, you know, having a political party is part of that splintering problem that keeps this lib-lab-com keep winning things, you know. The good thing with UKIP was different people joined for different reasons. So, you know, when we had voted to leave, they all started then splintering off and saying, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. And we've ended up with this, you know, they say the far right, but I don't like that left and right analogy. You know, maybe patriot and not patriot, I don't know. But look at communism and socialism, you end up at the same place, you know, a big house on the hill with a rich person eating loads and loads of poor people living in the streets nearby, you know, whether you're in Russia or you're in Washington. So, yeah, it sounded a little bit, no offense, like a party political broadcasting when you're doing your pitch. What I would say though is what you talked about there. You can't force someone to have a religion. It's like forcing someone to have politics. So I understand that you're Christian. I respect that. And you know, I might consider myself a lapsed Christian. I don't go to church, but I do believe in the Ten Commandments and living your life, you know, to do no harm to other people, which sort of touches on common law side of things. So we had a speaker come to Wellingborough one time, and that was her pitch was, you know, maybe you're not Christian, but maybe you could still live by Christian values because it was still a Christian country. And when you hear about things like in Parliament today, you know, there was an independent MP who was talking about, you know, we should allow people to marry their cousins. And that's for a long time now been something which people can see, you know, it's all history repeating. If people marry their cousins, they tend to have children that aren't well or die too young and things like that. So we stopped doing it and become, you know, look to get a mixture of blood in the family, if you like. And this country's been really good at that when you look at all the different cultures that come here and now they've integrated. So You know, if you're trying to force your opinion on other people, like what's trying to happen in Parliament today, there's a lot of resistance from people. Now, you know, finding if everybody wants to leave the UN, if you had a poll, a direct democracy poll, and got a result, 60%, whatever it is, you know, it might even be as high as 80, said, you know, the people I know, nobody wants to be in the UN. But you can go to that debate, you can go to that official meeting, wherever, and say, I've got 60% of the people behind me. You know, we're not doing it. And just touch on one thing there, Paul, was you said, you know, when we left the EU, you know, it's been a shit show afterwards, excuse my language. And the question I have for you is, do you think we left? Because, you know, as I point out to people, we're still sending them money. We can't decide where we fish or what crops we grow. We've got obey their laws. We've got no control of our border. I don't think anything changed. In fact, I think it got worse. You know, when we find out we signed the Marrakesh Agreement, which is basically no borders across Europe, and that's what we've seen, is people can just like land in a boat in Greece and walk all the way to Ireland. Well, that can't be right. You know, we've got these borders for a reason. One thing Europe's been good at is falling out and fighting with each other throughout history. And we can see in places like Syria now, all you need is just something to upset the balance and all hell breaks loose. So, you know, I think we're heading for something quite nasty. But I'd like everyone to know about direct democracy, because we're probably going to need it afterwards, even if we can't get some kind of measure of direct democracy before.
Right.
John, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, let me take over there. So just everyone in the chat, please share, subscribe to us if you're not already subscribed, get into us and all that lot, please share that. Now, I heard that MP today, and although there is no law in the UK to say that you can't marry your cousin, the effects on it is dramatic, because in Oldham, we have the biggest disabled child caring team and that in the country because of Pakistani first cousin marriages. We pay uni students to go around to talk to people about it, but they're ignorant of it. And I'm going to be really ethnically blunt. If we carry on like this, our gene pool is going to be messed up. We're going to have more disabled kids. People's IQ and intelligence will go down. We're going to end up a disastrous mongrel country if we don't sort it out. And when the health and safety bill, when the last year that Johnson were in, not one mention in that bill about this kind of issue that affects the UK massively. Not one mention of it. I did videos on it and stuff like that. Now, going back to the Christian thing, you know, I've been knocking on doors, mate, for 3 years. And even though people aren't practicing Christians, they talk about family and community. And, you know, to me, I'm not a practicing Christian, but I do believe that, you know, we can build a community around a church. Church isn't always for praying. You have the old people's drop incense, and you do the pillars of our community and centers of our community. And we've lost that, which has broken up our community. And a lot of people I talk to at the door talk about that, talk about the you know, how it was in the past and stuff like that. No, we don't force anyone to be religious, not in our party. And there is plenty of people in the party who aren't particularly religious. And but, you know, I do believe that is one of the things that we've missed, because like Paul said, our morals have gone right out the window now. We're degenerates. You know what I mean? With men walking around the streets naked, showing the penises and stuff like that, and stuff like it's just degeneracy. And it's going to go worse and worse and worse unless we get some core moral principles back into our communities, like Paul said. We've got to bring that back. You know, I like direct democracy. I've already sent an email to a councillor, Oldham Council, asking for, if any particular ward, we have 20 wards, that they go round to them wards and they have a vote whether they want stop and search on kids and people in the area. If the ward says no, you don't do any stop and search. If they do say yeah, you do stop and search. You'll never see this in London. You'll never see this in London. People are too afraid to say because they'll get called them buzzwords that we don't like and stuff like that. But, you know, the party system, I think, works, but it's been hijacked by the two big parties. And we need a more broken up political system. That's why I liked the general election, because we had Reform, the Workers' Party, lots of independent parties across the country in every town and stuff like that. Bedfordshire now has an independent member of parliament and an independent council. So democracy is much better in it and stuff like that. Oldham, Labour now don't have the majority, and they have to be more democratic and go to other people to get votes for the policies and stuff like that. And that's what I want. That's what I want to see, because we've not had that for a long time. These parties have dominated the areas. They've had the majority. So whatever policy they want brings in. You know, and I don't care if you're independent, you're a small political party or anything. We just need to start voting differently, guys, and then break it all up. And, you know, I can say 100% that that's what happened in Oldham in the last general election. The three MPs got the lowest majorities they've had since becoming MPs. Next general election, 1, 2, maybe all three of them are going to be changed, and I think that's good. And that came through Reform and the Workers' Party running up here. So that's my little bit. But no, I still think the direct democracy is the right thing to do. I really do, because I mean, go on.
It can be, but it was Dostoevsky. A lot of people have said this. Once you stop believing in God, it's not that you don't believe in anything. You believe in everything. You're easily manipulated. Jesus said, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. If you take God out the picture, the absolutes, anything goes, because there's no absolutes then. So you get manipulation on a mass scale, people to vote for anything. But if you're able to manipulate them, if you're able to control the way they think, they'll vote as you tell them. So a couple of years ago, Ireland voted to murder preborn children. They voted for abortion. Even though the church for a long time had kept Ireland free from abortion, Ireland now murders its own preborn children. I mean, in Northern Ireland alone, it's thousands have already been murdered. I mean, they talk about the Troubles, 3,000 people were murdered in the Troubles. I think it's already something like 5,000 kids, preborn kids, are being ripped from their mother's wombs and murdered in Northern Ireland. This is how direct democracy can be horrendous. Because if the people are controlled by Satanists, they're going to vote for Satanism. You can't just sidestep the moral and religious issue and say, well, you know, I'm a lapsed Christian. I don't believe in right and wrong anymore. If the people believe in right and wrong, we get chaos. We get absolute insanity. As John said, we get degeneracy. And now it's not only that, it's about the wider culture as well, as John, talked about family, community. If there's no spiritual core to a society, there's a vacuum. And something will step into that. It could be Satanism, but it could easily be Islam. Islam is coming in. One of the reasons why we're not going to get the end of cousin marriage, because Islam approves it, is that Islam is taking over this society, town by town, city by city. I mean, who's the mayor of London, our capital city? Who controls our capital city? Go to council after council. They're run by Muslims now in their interest, pushing their agendas. Now, there's this bogey thing of Sharia law. Sharia law is Islam. Sharia law deals with what you eat, who you marry, when you marry, how many you marry, how many children you have, what moral practices you have. If you have Islam in society, you have Sharia law. And Sharia law has taken over more and more of Britain. And Keir Starmer has bottled it, and he won't challenge it at any, because he's an unbeliever. He's a left Christian, so he doesn't believe. He's got nothing to stand up against Islam, except, you know, it might be infringe on other people's rights. If you take the liberal argument, right, that let people do as they want, and you just end up with anarchy. You just end up with, I mean, why people want to be transgender, well, let them be transgender. If people want to be heroin addicts, let them be heroin addicts. If children want to have sex with adults, where's the line? 16, 15, 14? Everything becomes confused. It becomes chaos. But the only reason this society still survives is that we have a residual Christianity here, and that's dying rapidly. I mean, Islam is now becoming... Go on, Marcus.
Yeah, may I say
what do you want to say?
So,
yeah.
We're both Christians, right, Paul? So I would absolutely agree with you that the foundation of Western civilization was actually built on Christianity. Now, I don't think this is necessarily a political thing with Christianity, because I don't think Christianity is necessarily political. I think it's a spiritual and a moral foundation, right? And it's a relationship with God. So I don't necessarily...
Well, cultural. It's a cultural foundation as well.
Finish, Paul.
It's cultural.
Let me finish.
Yeah. But that's what I was focusing on, Mark.
Yeah, right. So I don't think any political system can necessarily get us out of this situation, because everything you said was right, Paul. Just hear me out. So I think as things get worse, as Sharia becomes more prominent inside of the West, people would, and the family is breaking down, society is breaking down. Like me and you would both agree that abortion is a very bad thing for society, even if you're not a Christian, right? But we see it through a Christian lens of children being murdered, for example. I think as things get worse and things become even more degenerate, I don't think it's even going to be a political thing. I think there will be a spiritual awakening within our people, what will turn people back to Christianity. Now, I don't think that will necessarily has to be done or will be done through politics, for example, because I don't believe that Christianity is necessarily a political thing, is it? It's actually a relationship with God, and it's a cultural thing, it's a spiritual thing. So yes, I completely agree with everything you say, but I think before we even get direct democracy, we will have an awakening with Christianity within the country, because as things get worse, people will turn back to their roots, their culture. And there's one thing what actually built Western civilization, and that's Christianity. That's all I wanted to say, Paul, and I'll pass it back to you, mate.
Can I just come back on that, because there is such a thing as human agency, right? It's not mechanical. You lose your faith, things fall to pieces, you go back to your faith. No, it's not like that at all. Human agency comes into it, and mind control comes into it. The reason we've lost Christianity is because of cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism was created by Jews in the 1920s to undermine every aspect of our society, and it's been incredibly successful, because it's financed by their money. Now, they will stop any return back to Christianity. It will be a battle. Where will that battle be fought? In the political realm. I mean, you're either dealing with reality, or you're living in like a sort of idealistic fishbowl where you pretend it's just one idea against another, one vote against another. There are forces at play here, powerful forces which are organized and have huge amounts of money and control the mass media and buy the politicians and generate the wars. You've got an enemy. You see, this is what Christianity teaches you. As well as goodness, you've got badness. As well as God, you've got Satan. Anything you do to improve things, there's going to be a counterforce that wants to destroy it. Now, if people from outside our society didn't in the 1930s, they didn't like the national populism that took over Europe. And in the post-war period, they framed it so that we cannot have democracy. The institutions like, for example, the media, the newspapers, they're supposed to be the tribune to the people. They're supposed to express the will of the people. But the newspapers and the whole media became controlled by the globalist elite. And all they were involved in was manipulating people, lying to them, demonizing anybody who was speaking the truth. And along came Elon Musk. And this is where money talks. He bought X and made it a free speech platform. and it's transformed the world. I don't know how long he'll get away with this, but he's won the US presidential election. So there's hope in this. So we're not just dealing here with abstract ideas about what's the best form of democracy or how do we go govern our countries. We're dealing here with different forces that want to prosper our society, forces which are patriotic, forces which want us. You see, you talk about abortion, right? Abortion was promoted for a reason. And John Paul II, when he was Pope, put his finger on that reason. And he said, no nation can survive mass abortion. No nation. So if your nation has mass abortion, it will not survive. And that is an absolute truth. And that's happening in Britain. So unless we stop abortion, there's no people. Our birth rate collapsed. It's now down to 1.3 kids. I don't know how many kids Alan's got. I've got 4 kids. But, if we're not having kids, there's no future anyway. There's no who's going to partake in this democracy. Islam comes in with moral absolutes. Islam has no respect for democracy whatsoever. They see democracy as contrary to the will of Allah. But do they have big families? You bet they do. They'll have 10, 12 kids, which means they dominate. They take over. Numbers count. Demography counts. So, yeah, we can have different political systems. We can have different voting systems, different governing systems. But unless we have a rock-solid morality and spirituality, it's all just pissing in the wind, really.
Yeah.
I'll come back
Alan, over to you.
I'll come back on the Democratic votes you spoke about earlier, and that we don't get proper debate when we get decisions. Like, for example, you mentioned abortion in Ireland. The problem with that kind of debate is you've got so much propaganda around these days. Like you said, it's all been bought. And the people made the decision on what they were watching on television. Someone probably had an impassioned plea about something, and they'll use things like rape and stuff like that to get their argument. It may not have even happened to them. The problem is that if you've got a proper democracy, direct democracy system, we have a proper debate about it. You've got a lead time. Well, the best example really was Brexit, because we all paid for a leaflet that David Cameron wrote or organised, telling us how good it would be to stay in the EU, and straight away it was like, I don't know why I'm paying to tell myself this. I want to find it out. So, I was involved with the Vote Leave campaign. I was travelling all around the East Midlands, doing public stalls, talking to people, knocking on doors, public meetings, with all kinds of people. I was at a meeting in Chesterfield with Arthur Scargill. I was at a meeting in Louth with Jacob Rees-Mogg. It's been an amazing journey for me, but coming through all of it was the fact that we had a proper debate about it before we had the vote. And yeah, it was a tight vote. And we need to make sure, if we do have anything like this, there's some kind of protection, because the mass decision might not be the best one, and the next generation might vote the opposite. But at its core, if the people decide something, the politicians that stand there and represent them have a valid argument. They have the real good reason why they should do it. Talking about religion, I've always felt that religion and politics are very, very similar. Just look at what's happening with them all. You've got a set of policies, a set of rules. You've got an audience. You've got a support base. There's scriptures you read out from your manifesto. There's a lot of comparisons there. And a lot of these places that you mentioned have got like a Muslim-led mayors and councils and things. It's because they've managed to manipulate the audience and say, we need you to sign these votes, vote for this person, whatever it is. It's from our culture, he must be a good guy, that kind of thing. Whereas if we go out and talk to people about elections, most people are just switched off now because they feel their vote doesn't count. in that referendum, which wasn't that long ago, you know, there was 34 million people voted thereabouts. You know, that everybody felt that their vote counted, and at the end of the day, it did, because we saw exactly what the population thought about this. The problem with that was we trusted the wrong people to deliver it. So yeah, there's a lot we're talking about. It's been a really good conversation.
Let me get my saying. So yeah, we had in our last election in Oldham, I worked with a guy called Peter Brown. Does videos. He's always spoke out, and I said to him, everyone's getting excited that Labour are going to lose the majority. And I said, listen, guys, it's after this election, it's going to go worse before it goes better. And then 2 days after the election, Pete come up to me, you're right, John, it's going worse before it gets better. It does look, and it's the same with Brexit. We're going to have to, we're on the ocean now. Our boat's a bit knackered. We just got to get it right, and then it's smooth sailing. So we're going to struggle. We're going to be in difficulty in some areas and stuff like that until we get back out into the world and stuff like that. But, you know, Brexit is what we needed. If we hadn't had Brexit now, we're going to get completely destroyed. And like Alan said, we've only left in name only. We haven't properly left. Fishing, there's loads of issues as well. European Court of Human Rights and stuff like that. We've got to come out of all these things to have proper Brexit. But I definitely agree on there. But, you know, I like direct democracy. I really do. And like you said, it's not up to any particular party. You're going to leave it up to your constituents. So if I ever get my council seat, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be going around asking them. I'm going to say, look, are you going to vote for this? Do you want this in your area? If they want stop and search, I'm going to go to chief of police. You better start stop and searching. Most of the 3/4 of my ward want stop and search. So get that stop and search done. You know what I mean? And obviously, they should do this in London, but obviously, they're just going to bring up that buzzword, which stops everything. You know what I mean? But yeah, carry on. Someone else.
I'm happy to pick it back up again.
Go on.
The crisis we have at the moment is with the direct democracy movement, of which I'm a member. It's a movement, not a party. We were talking about different ways we could try and implement this, and we started working with a private company, BlockVote, which used blockchain technology, which is what they use for cryptocurrency. It's not gambling; it's using it for something positive. And we've done a lot of development, a lot of work with them. We come up with a brilliant model, but the problem was getting people to sign up for it. You know, they'll give their bank details to Amazon and things like that, but they just get, you know, a utility bill or something just to prove that you live at that address. Because any vote which we put up on there would be relevant to their area. So it could be their ward, it could be their parliamentary constituency, it could be the whole country. And, you know, we were making some good traction. Unfortunately, the funders that we had, you know, stepped back. They said, we put enough into this. It's not much is happening. So we're looking for something right now. And we are looking at other people. And BlockVote are actually working on something which we might work with Telegram or something like that. WhatsApp perhaps. So we're still working on it, but what we need is somebody who's got a really good model that they can bring to us, so that we can then share this. Now, something I'm particularly looking at, which I think is quite a good experience, is the national residents associations. So I respect, you know, you said you support your independence. But a lot of people think, well, do I vote for the big party or do I vote for a local guy who's not going to have much punch? And then they'll step away from supporting that person because they think they're not going to get anything. But if we all join together and network, we've got a stronger voice. And let's take something, for example, if they want to put up a 5G mast down your street, if they want to put a load of immigrants into a hotel nearby, right by a school, you know, you've got to say, and if you say, this ward here where I live, said no, like you just said, John, that it can't happen, because if they do put them in there, and we've got a mandate to say this can't happen, people don't want it, then the people have got every right to then take it that step further. And we heard about, burning hotels down in Wales and stuff. Let's try and do a democracy step first before we get to that, because obviously property and people may get harmed. So
one thing that interested me, Alan, what you talked about, was the block vote, the Muslim block vote, through the postal vote. Now, Sadiq Khan in London actually lost on the day of the election. People who turned up at the polling stations and actually voted for the Conservative woman. He won the election in London on the postal vote. A lot of the votes were collected from mosques and whatever. Now, we saw in America in 2020 the steal of the presidential election. But it was the Russian dictator, Joseph Stalin, who said, it doesn't matter who votes. What matters is who counts the votes. So if you're willing to count illegitimate votes, I mean, the amazing thing in this last presidential election in America was Kamala Harris only won in states which didn't have voter ID or chain of ownership on the ballot. So you can put in phony ballots. I mean, it's and this is happening in Britain. The amazing thing is, for me, with the Tories, 14 years in power, and they never tackled the postal vote issue. That postal vote is still manipulated by certain groups. I mean, the Muslims have a great system. You just bring your ballot into the mosque. The imam tells you who to vote for. You fill it in, they post it. And Labour organised their elections like a military operation. I've stood for mayor, I've stood for police commissioner, I've stood in the European elections. I've seen how Labour operate in coordination with the mass media. They get all the coverage, all the positive coverage. They're people on the mass media, running the mass media as operatives. And then they have all their voters on the postal vote. And it's so effective, because if they don't vote, they ring them and said, look, they haven't received your postal vote. Can you fill it in? And someone might say, well, I can't be bothered, really. Say, oh, don't worry. We'll come round to your house and we'll assist you, or we'll help you, whatever. We'll collect it for you. And this is how they operate. They have all these paid workers. This is why, excuse me, got a chest. Today, Reform. I've got this guy on board. I think it's, what's his name? What's his name again? The guy, Nick Candy. Nick Candy.
Yeah.
He's offered. He said, I'm going to give Reform a 7-figure check. He said, I'm going to raise £40 million for Reform, which means Reform can have an office in every constituency. They can have an agent going around getting people on the postal vote. They can do what Labour does. They can pay for people to go around and collect the postal votes. They can have advertising. They can control. They can get in with local media through advertising and make sure that they get a good slant on their thing. Money talks in politics. We talked about manipulation. Money is so powerful in politics. And unless you've got a heck of a lot of money behind you, the only thing they can substitute for money is enthusiasm. I mean, when I stood, I got 7,000 votes as a police commissioner, basically just because I was enthusiastic and I went round and had a great leaflet. I had a little team of work. The Labour Party, who had millions to spend, they had all their postal votes, but we still got over 7,000 votes because we had enthusiasm. But that's transient. You actually need structure. You need money. This is why the party system, you can't ignore it. You've got to have the party system. Now, if direct democracy can come down along the line further from that, great. But first of all, we've got to break this LibLabCon. We've got to break this stranglehold on British politics. John has said that in the last election, a lot of people didn't vote for the LibLabCon, but they're still in pole position, so they still got up most of the MPs. We've got to break that. Reform got to think 4 MPs for how many million votes? 4.5 million votes. 1 million votes for every MP. That's crazy. Yeah. We haven't got a PR system, but We haven't got direct democracy. We've got this antiquated first past the post system. We have to play by their rules. And it's going to take money and a massive party like Reform to break it. But someone's got to break this mold and reshape politics. Marcus, what do you think?
Yeah, money definitely
I'll come back on that when Marcus has spoke.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, money definitely talks. But I think if you have God on your side, I think if you have the will, you can overcome that at the end of the day. I generally do believe that. I know me and Paul have had a little bit of a differences on the stream tonight, but yeah, both brothers in Christ, obviously. And I do think that people are going to wake up. I do believe money is important at this moment in time, but no amount of money is going to help the situation in this country. And I think if reform falls, there definitely needs to be something else what replaces it, whether it's a NHPUK party or a direct democracy movement. There's different ways to go about this. I don't know, even as a reform member, even with all the money that reform has in the world at the moment, I don't know, just because of certain things I now think about reform, if it is going to be the answer to the situation that we find ourselves in. But at the end of the day, let's see. I mean, reform can chuck all the money in the world at it, but people can kind of see what's happening in reform when someone donates, I think, £1 million to the party, and then someone gets but up to like second or third position, I believe, whoever that Muslim chap is. So I forget his name. But people do realise that, and they do see that as sleazy. So I think eventually down the road, there will be a great awakening in the UK. And let's just see what kind of happens, I can't predict the future. I tried to predict it, and I've been wrong a couple of different times. So let's just kind of see. Alan, I'll pass it back to you, mate.
Thanks, yeah. First of all, big shout out to Julie, who I see has been commenting there as a good friend in direct democracy there. I can't see the comments, unfortunately, because I'm on my phone and it's really small. But I don't think money is the answer, because we've seen failures. Like, look at the SNP, they were nothing until somebody won the lottery and then paid for like candidates in every seat, and suddenly they became very popular. They introduced all these horrible policies, and now everyone hates them. We've seen it with the big business of the Conservatives, the unions of the Labour side of things. All these promises, all this money's bouncing around. Look at the American elections, where you've got candidates spending millions to try and get elected. And if the wind is against you, you're not going to win. And people still don't seem to understand or grasp it, that if I'm the direct democracy candidate for my ward where I live, and I say, we've had a poll, 72% of people said they don't want immigrants in this hotel. So it can't happen, and it doesn't matter who's in Parliament and how much money they're spending. And something about reform, which a lot of people haven't really realised, is if they did get elected right now, that would be a private company in charge of United Kingdom PLC. And that can't be good for anything. It has to be something. We've got a great system here where we've had this pinball backwards and forwards, or ping pong, but we've got social elements like a shared responsibility for defence, nuclear bombs and things, because I couldn't afford one of those. The NHS, the education system, there's faults with it, we know that, but everybody's chipping in. Even if you ain't got kids, you're still paying for everybody in the country to get an education, which can't be a bad thing. But then we've also got the elements of the conservative or capitalist side, where I'm a DJ, I have my own business, but I also work for a company. If I wanted to employ a relative, I can. If I want to buy a house or own a car, I can. So I think this is why a lot of people look at the UK and think, I'd like to live there. There's a lot of freedoms and things I like. But we still don't get it right, because we're looking at transport thinking that should be back in public ownership. We're looking at services, maybe they should be back in private ownership. So, you know, there's a debate. We need a proper debate and the costing. You know, for example, when we sold the power companies, maybe we should have put a caveat in saying nobody from another country can own these shares. There's got to be people from the UK who own them.
Yeah.
You know, that's the sort of thing that we should have a debate about and the things that we should put in place.
Right, just let me get one thing about donations. They're going on about Elon Musk donating to Reform, 100 million or whatever. But how come no one said about Israeli donations to our MPs? How come nobody says about Chinese donations to our MPs? You know, to lean them that way. End all foreign influence like that in the UK. Fuck off to these Chinese and Jewish paymasters who give people money knowing that they'll stick up for their kind of things. End it all. Then you can end Elon Musk. But don't no one say about Elon Musk giving money when all these MPs are already getting money. Angela Rayner, David Lammy, Keir Starmer all get money from Israel. Yeah, they're all moaning about...
he hasn't put any money in yet, Elon Musk.
Not yet, but they're already moaning. All the lefties go, it's not right. But they don't say nothing about any other kind of influence, Chinese or Jewish. They don't.
Can I just say something about Elon Musk?
Go on.
Elon Musk, his nan was called Cora Amelia Robinson. She was from 36 Bridge Road in Liverpool in Mosty Hill. Elon Musk is a Scouser. And therefore, because he's a Scouser, we give him the thumbs up. And don't forget, Donald Trump's mum is from the island of Harris in Scotland. He's Scottish. She was a MacLeod. So Donald Trump is eligible to play football for Scotland, and Elon Musk, through his nan, is eligible to play football for England. So they're not that far. Elon!
I am going to cut that little bit I said about money and donations and put it all over Twitter, because it just winds me up. They never say anything, and it just really creeps me. A couple of years ago, loads of MEPs in the European Parliament were under fire for taking money off Chinese. They said it was happening over here, and then we've got Jews paying everyone in the European Parliament and over here, and it's not right. It's not right. They shouldn't be getting donation money like that, because that means that them people are going to influence their decisions. That's why the West backing Israel. That's why they're bombing Gaza. If they wasn't backed by the West, they would not be bombing Gaza. They wouldn't be. But they're paying everybody. Money is the root of all evil. Go on.
It's been said before, you got to follow the money. You know, we hear about, the UK's just donated a load to Ukraine to fight the Russians. That didn't go to Ukraine. That went to the munitions companies in America and the pharmaceuticals companies. You know, it's not like we help them like to get some more bombs. They know where the money's going when they give it to them. And the main thing for me is they didn't ask our permission. You know, I'm not a supporter of Ukraine or Russia, but, you know, I'm with Nigel on a lot of things. And one thing he said was, we're not the world police. We shouldn't be out doing, you know, these battles and things like that. In certain cases, we have to like step up, like what happened in Europe with the Nazis. But we seem to think that we're the first people to put our hands up and our hands in our pockets. You know, when something starts kicking off, and who gets harmed? It's not the politicians. It's the.
I'll tell you what, Alan. I wish to God we had not stepped up in the First World War or even the Second World War, because those continental wars are just bloodbaths. We lost 1 million lads in the First World War fighting for what? Defend Belgium. And Belgium doesn't even want to exist. They hate each other, the Walloons and Flemish. So the world wars were mad. All these wars are mad, and they're all about money, these big wars. And we've got to be talk about direct democracy. We don't want conscription brought in we don't want Britain to be fought. We've got to fight to defend this country. John, game over.
Thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you. Some good new people. I see Julie there. I did put the Resist Telegram channel in the chat at the beginning, so if you want to look back, and I will put it in again. Just bear with me. I've been a part of it for ages, and I know there's people who view my streams off there. But I will put that in again. Interesting what Alan said about the blockchain thing. We nearly got into this blockchain. It was called Free Speak. It was a few years ago. Me, James, Goddard, a couple of others, and we got approached by a guy who wanted to set this Free Speak blockchain thing up, but we never pushed it. But that is one of the ways that we should be going. It really definitely is. Yeah. Did you agree there? Yeah, that's one of the ways that we should be doing.
Paul already mentioned that, we can't trust the paper voting system, because it's open to abuse. And one reason I think that Trump won the American election this time was because after last time, there's more scrutiny. We saw video footage of people marking votes outside the polling station, then walking in with them, but now there was people at all the polling stations watching them, and there were faults as well. I remember there was the drop boxes that seemed to be getting set on fire and things like that. So, no system seems to be perfect, but we've got blockchain technology, which is basically, it's electronic, but you're secure. So once you vote, it can't be changed or tampered with, and you've got a record of it on your computer, and they've got a record of it on their computer. But there's no leaks of personal information and things like that. All these people who are trading crypto, they're happy with it. It's working for them in what they're doing. We just, we could use it, piggyback it if you like, for democracy, and that's where we're working at the moment. So yeah, we're looking forward to the elections next May, and anyone that wants to get involved, join a party like yourself, stand as an independent candidate, or take a look at a local residents association, because I personally believe that if we say no, not here, it will move somewhere else, and then people are going to look and say, well, why didn't you do it in that ward there? And they say, right, we want that direct democracy here as well. And pretty soon it's going to go from a ward to a town to a county. And the places that do, ignore it and let shit happen, they're going to turn into right shitholes, and no one want to live there. So, that's where I'm coming from right now.
You're right. You're right on that, though, because I've been to dozens of hotels across the country. And in all these towns, I don't know one town that came to the residents first and said, look, we're putting people in the hotel.
Exactly.
Because if we have direct democracy, they would have to ask us. And then we could say no or yeah. And they have not asked anyone, because they know that if they went to come to Oldham and said, right, do you want an hotel filled up with illegals? The people in Oldham would say no. Yeah. You know what I mean? So they never asked us. So that, it's a big thing, that. But thank you very much, everyone.
Let me just, before you finish, tell you about Leamington Spa. There's Whitnash is a residents association there, and of course they had all the crazy plans, all the money they were going to spend on, I don't know what, new housing estates, bypasses, wherever it was. And the people of Whitnash said no, they want a community centre. They've now got a community centre, because the local residents association asked the people first, and that's what they ended up with. So these examples are out there. Look at Swindon, look at Thetford. Thetford, we've got the Great Resist in February. There's going to be one there, so look out for tickets for that. But yeah, we are doing stuff. We're doing the best we can, but we need your help. And then people who don't vote, that's the people we want to target, not these people who are all conditioned anyway. Get out there and make a difference. I've just had a phone call today from a very sweet lady who says, I'm getting so angry now, I just need to do something. So I'm going to meet up with her and have a chat about what we can do and what we can't do. But I was with some councillors last week as part of a group of independents that are standing as in the next election. And one of the serving councillors we've got at the moment in Northamptonshire, he said to me, we don't need 51% to win this council thing. He said, all we need is 15%, because we will then be able to lean on the others and get the best deals that we can. Obviously, we're aiming for gold. We want gold. But if we get silver, we know how to deal with it. So that's, where we're coming from at the moment.
Marcus?
Yeah, brilliant. I would just echo what Alan just said. Please get involved if you can. Obviously, you don't need to pay anything. It's not membership. You know, it's free to get involved. It's also a good way to connect with other people who are fed up with the LabCon, I guess. You know, I was a bit hesitant when I first heard about this, but when I actually delved in to direct democracy, I thought this is the solution to save Britain, other than Christianity, which is obviously the foremost, that me and Paul would probably agree with. But yeah, Christianity and direct democracy, I think that would be brilliant. Yeah, just please get involved. Obviously, we're looking at new techniques, new ways to get the public to be aware of direct democracy. Please share this everywhere you can and everything, like the stream, and subscribe to John's channel.
If you want to stand as a candidate, get in contact, join the Nationalising Party. But I will support independents, and I am going to support a couple of independents who I know. But it's not difficult in local elections. It's pretty easy. In the MP and them kind of elections, you do have to pay money. But it's just one of them things. You do have to pay money. But in the local election, you don't have to pay money. You just got to fill some stuff in and then go around knocking on doors. And you'll find that as soon as you start knocking on doors, people will want to talk to you. They want to get involved. They want to vote for you. I've had people come up and say, look, I don't see anyone for 10 years yet. I've seen John 3 times. I'm voting for him. The guy don't even know my policies. That's what he said at the polling station. It was as simple as that. He said he'd come up to my door and he'd talk to me and my old man, my dad. So I'm voting for him. Didn't say anything about policies. Just wanted to see you. Wants to you to knock on the door. Pat's having a good run in London, and we've got other areas where we're having a good run, and Oldham as well. But yeah, get involved in politics, guys. And just vote. That's all you need to do is vote, and it'll be.
As John Lennon said, another famous Scouser. Power to the people. Power to the people. Right on. Go on, Elon. Power to the people.
Listen, because Elon and Elon comes from Liverpool, don't start getting smart on my streams, you, right? You know what I mean? You can give him the honorary Liverpudlian title if you can take it.
Elon, we call him now, or Elon Scouts. Nice to meet you, Alan. All the best, guys. Take care, Marcus. Bye, John.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Don't forget, email us, Johnny NHPUK. Good night.